Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Brendan Burns Show. Joining me today is Claudia Christian. Now, Claudia is an American actress, singer, probably best known for her role as Commander Susan Ivanova on the science fiction television series Babylon 5. She's also voiced several characters for the Bethesda Softworks, video games, Skyrim, and Fallout 4. Her main charity, and the reason why I reached out, is her work in publicizing the Sinclair Method as a cure for alcoholism and her documentary called One Little Pill. Claudia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you and to all. And Claudia, I really want to dedicate the majority of our conversation to talking about what is the Sinclair Method and how can it help people battling addiction. But before we dive into that, if you could share a little bit about your background, your childhood, your upbringing, and what sort of led you to your career as a professional entertainer.
Well, basically, I came from a family of three older brothers. So I was the little sister who nobody listened to. I was quite shy and scared of them, frankly. But eventually it led to a theater class. To make a long story short, I took that theater class. I started performing in plays. I loved it. I had this very strange sense of, I loved books. I loved imagination. And I thought, honestly, I thought that when my dad got transferred to California, that it was because I needed to be on TV. So, I was kind of a mystical child, to say the least. We moved there when I was just before my 14th birthday, and I just knew exactly what I wanted to do. I found a manager randomly. I started stealing my parents' car and driving to Los Angeles to go on meetings and pretending that I was 18, the whole bit. And then of course, I did find a manager, and she found out that I wasn't 18. But by that point, I had so much experience and confidence under my belt just from modeling and from getting odd jobs and things like that, and living on my own at 16, that the first series I went up for, I booked. So it was just a progression. And to me, it seems really natural. Nowadays, when I look back on it, I feel like it was bizarrely easy, I guess you would say. I mean, I worked hard as the preamble to it, but it all fell into place to make that more logical. It just sort of was meant to be. And I've been acting on television and film since 1983, so that's over 35 years, and in theater longer than that. And I've continued to work as an actress and as a voice artist, and I love to write books still. But everything kind of came to a head for me when I realized that and mental illness, very things in nature are brain disorders, everything from anorexia to bipolar are treated as something that includes a huge amount of shame and stigma. And I thought, why? why if we find something that works for us, why shouldn't we be screaming from the rooftops, just the same as somebody with diabetes would be screaming from the rooftop if they could take some magical little pill and never have to shoot insulin again or check all day long. I mean, if it just made their lives easier and more complete and allowed them to live the life that they want to live, why wouldn't you want to share that instead of burying that information? And I didn't understand the anonymous quality of meetings or anything like that. I thought, well, if something works, then it's your obligation as a human being to share it so that you can help others. So that long-winded story led me to, of course, you reaching out to me because of the Sinclair Method.
Yes.
And that,
Yeah, no, thank you. That's fantastic. And I really want to talk a lot about like why the Sinclair Method is not shared as widely as it should be. But first, can you just talk a little bit about you getting involved with alcohol? Just because there's some listeners who might be drinking socially, but actually it might be more compulsive, to help sort of diagnose the problem before we talk about the treatment.
Well, the reason why we don't just say alcoholism nowadays, we say alcohol use disorder, is because there's such a myriad of different issues involved with it. For instance, you have the college kid binge drinking 3 days a week, but getting straight A's, and not drinking in the morning, and not, that's one person. Then you have the mommy and me 5 o'clock mother of two toddlers who wine o'clock start pouring the Chardonnay every single day. And maybe that, if they're in their 30s, that might lead to them suddenly wanting a little pick me up in the morning. Then you also have people who are biological addicts, meaning that they have the genetic predisposition, and then they engage in the behavior. So to explain my background was that, and it is rather unfortunate, because through the years, I've learned so much from researchers that have been so generous with me with their time and information, and scientists who I've just cold called or emailed saying, but I don't understand this and this. Yeah. And there are lots of different beliefs and research on this, but I have noticed that if you have the genetic predisposition towards alcohol misuse, and you drink before the human brain is fully developed, which is around 21, 22 years old, I do honestly believe, just from personal experience seeing it, those people will have a much higher chance of developing an alcohol use disorder. So if somebody gives, Uncle Tommy gives 8-year-old Joey a little nip of whiskey for the fun of it at Christmas time, that you could be triggering something that eventually could, destroy that young boy's life. And I'm not being dramatic here. I've seen the results. People who simply don't drink until their brain is fully formed, seems like they have much less chance of abusing alcohol in the future. So in my house, there was, my dad went sober in his 40s, simply because he has Hep C. So, and he decided he would have to drink for work. And he just didn't, he had a hangover one day, and he said, I don't even know why I'm doing this. And he just quit, like cold turkey. He always understood that he had a liver issue with his hepatitis C, which he got from heart surgery. So, so he was careful about his health. My mother was very much a light drinker. Never seen her, drinking in the morning or drunk or anything like that. We would have wine because, she's from Germany. So there would be watered down wine for kids, or we could taste things. But there was never abuse in the family. It wasn't until I became, my really early 40s. So that had nothing to do with that's not environmental, in my opinion. I don't believe that's I mean, yes, there was beer and wine, but it was still in the fridge. We weren't all sneaking stuff. We weren't physically addicted. We weren't saying, oh, the parents are gone, let's go raid the bar. There was none of that sort of behavior at all. I mean, I had the normal, teenage experiences of drinking too much or dating somebody older and them alcohol being a part of the issue. And that of course led to negative things in my life as well. But I wouldn't say that my home life had any impact on that, because there wasn't an active alcoholic as a parental figure, nor was there an active alcoholic as a sibling or uncle. What little I know now, the few people in my family that were alcoholic, by the time I became of an age where I could recognize something like that, they were either sober or not doing it in front of the kids. So in other words, there's no reference to the bad aunt, falling down and hurling abuses at the child, or the classic syndromes that you say, oh, you're the kid of an alcoholic. That didn't exist for me. What happened to me was I had bad genes. I mean, there's 3 children now in my family. One brother passed, but out of the 3, 2 of us got the addictive gene. The other one is fine. He can drink and, he's fine. He can have a glass and go, I'm done. Like a normie, as we say.
That's more like coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can argue this until you're blue in the face, and you can say, well, was it a traumatic experience, or was it a physiological issue? Are you only a biological addict? Did you drink because you were raped, or your dad yelled at you? Bottom line is, there's a medical way to treat the compulsion, and that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
We're not talking about, if you need to talk to your therapist, that's great. If you need to, if you had a crappy childhood, or you have to work things out with your spouse or whatever, that's a whole different issue. That's something that you should absolutely engage in and search out. However, what we're talking about is just, will this pill, this inexpensive, generic, FDA approved medication, help fix your brain?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I want to dive into that, naltrexone and the Sinclair method. But first, what I want to ask you about, which resonated so much with me, because on my recovery, I did every program. I went to seminars, Tony Robbins, life coach, therapy, like literally thousands of dollars and years of just not having a solution. And then literally watching you say the same thing on your documentary, One Little Pill, for listeners who haven't watched it yet, go watch it now. But what was your experience like with alcohol use disorder and the sort of traditional, the AA, the big book, and everything you're supposed to do, before we talk about what did work for you?
I don't want to diss any other method that works for anybody. And anybody who knows me knows that I have my exterior persona. To be completely honest, I have in my entire life probably known or met one or two people that AA did work for. However, one of them did relapse after 20 years, and the other one was chronically angry, and I think caught in what's called the alcohol deprivation effect. I don't like this expression, but it's called a dry drunk. They became somebody who was a sugar addict, a caffeine addict, a nicotine addict, and they isolated, and they just became a miserable person. Now, on the other hand, they're alive. They found a way to stay alive, and that's terrific. And if that's their choice, wonderful. And I know that people have wonderful communities of friends through abstinence-based programs, but there's also smart recovery. There's HAMS. There's lots of different programs that you can, moderation management, that you can attend in order to make friends that are like-minded. So that is a good thing that's happened now. For a very long time, all there was abstinence, AA, or death. And when I think about how much more humane it was when my grandfather had to go into detox, I mean, nowadays they throw you into detox, and it's all about, grandfather went years, he'd get give him a little bit less alcohol. So he slowly tapered the body. He was, helped out in a decent environment. The nurses were nice to him, and he got out, and there wasn't all this heavy idea of it's all about your childhood, or it's all about, and I'm not negating that. Believe me, I'm not saying that a lot of people drink to cover up what happened in their life or to suppress emotions. We talk about this all the time in my TSM monthly meetings, is, you keep pushing things down with alcohol. But for another giant subset of people, it's just addiction. It's compulsive behavior. You can't rationalize it. That would be like me saying to you, why did you gamble your house away? Well, what normal person would do that? Who would actually gamble their home away? And to a gambler, they would go, I get it. To an alcoholic, how could you drink and while you're driving your child to school?
Yeah.
If you're an alcoholic, you get it. It's a compulsive disorder. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're morally bereft. It doesn't mean that you should be punished. It means that you should be helped in any way, shape, or form that works for you. And that means options. That means, yes, it's wonderful they have free meetings all around the world. But if meetings don't work for an individual, thank God they have medications now. It's called science, baby. There's now naltrexone, baclofen, there's acamprosate, Topiramax, there's, now morphine, and a gabapentin, combinations of them that can help the individual go through cravings or mental games, also just through the physical discomfort, but also ones that undo the addiction in the brain. And that is what is so miraculous to me, is that no longer do we have to wish it away or pray it away or think that we're just a bad person. If we can't make it go away, now we have another option. We can go to a doctor and say, you know what, I've done traditional treatment to death, but it's not working for me. And that doctor will say, well, how about trying this? How about trying a combo of this? And believe me, as I've said a million times before, I was never this Western medication pill popping. I never even took aspirin. I was always like, yo, you're taking an ibuprofen? No, you got to feel the pain and hydrate more. Seriously, I was so, if I would have thought that a pill would save my life, then, I would have been shocked back in the day. I was such a I'm clean, man,
Yeah.
and that, now that I have friends who are diabetics and take statins for their heart issues and high cholesterol or whatever, I realized that was really naive of me, that there are things that we've developed that much like cleaning your hands before you perform surgery, which took hundreds of years to figure out.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay, maybe we should step into the future here.
Yeah. No, and I love
present.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because I am also a very like Eastern philosophy, like holistic health type person. Try to go there first, and I was skeptical when I was like, oh, medicating this, but I just want to say that this works, and if it works, then I'm open to it, right? Like that's most important.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is that you and I both tried every available option. I mean, I went from the chanting, to the praying, to the hypnotherapy, to the acupuncture, to dramatic diet change, veganism, macrobiotic. I mean, all of this stuff that I was under the influence of every shyster out there, that was saying this is the cure. And I would buy every book and I would try everything, and I'd sit in meetings, and meetings made me want to drink. It was just so depressing, so dire. It was like everybody. It was like the old adage of a country and western song in reverse. Well, I lost my wife, lost my dog. Wow. Okay. And you're still, identifying as an addict. And that to me was so unusual from the way I think is this. Okay, my dad had heart surgery. He doesn't go around identifying himself as somebody who's a survivor of heart surgery. Right. My mother has had breast cancer twice. She doesn't go around saying, hi, I'm a survivor of breast cancer.
Yeah.
My brothers have had aneurysms and all sorts of, things have happened, but we don't go around saying, yeah, that's who I am. So I thought, well, this is a medical condition, and I don't want to go around the rest of my life holding up my hand saying, so I'm an alcoholic. I believe in the power of words, and I didn't want to be sick anymore. Yeah. And I didn't want that to be who I identify with. Ironically, of course, now that I've become an advocate, that is exactly what everybody identifies me with. But that's okay. That's in a different manner.
Right.
Yeah, I'm using it to help other people. But you know what I'm saying. It's like you just kind of, you don't want to continue to feel bad about yourself when you're having a good day. You don't want to go, oh yeah, I have to stand up and say I'm an alcoholic.
Yes, absolutely. What a great way to think about it. Now, finally, what is the Sinclair Method, and also how did you find it?
Well, in 2009, I went into a medical detox because I was so I don't know why I was so naive back then, but I really thought that if you drank too much to the point where you got sick, you have to stop drinking and just cold turkey it. Not even knowing about what my grandfather was doing in the 40s. Now, I didn't know that until a few years ago, which were you taper. You
Yeah.
taper off of it so your body can get used to it. You start doing exercise, you eat really healthy, and you just slowly eliminate it so your body doesn't go into shock.
Right.
And worse, you stroke out or die. So in this particular instance, I just went cold turkey, and I started to really feel bad, and my body was losing motor control, and that scared me to death. I couldn't speak, I couldn't walk, I couldn't get dressed. I was literally like having spasms. So I did manage to call a friend of mine, and I said, you got to come over now. And she helped me go into a medical detox that was covered by my insurance. And make a long story short, that was a horrific experience. But I mean, just the worst. So as soon as I got some medication, which I didn't even know at that point that you could get medication to not feel the DTs or any of that stuff. I think they gave me trazodone or Valium or something. And suddenly I was like, wow, I feel so much better. Okay. Not shaking anymore. I didn't feel like I was a risk, and I was having a miserable time there. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to check myself out because I can't sleep here. This feels like it would be more detrimental, more hurtful to my own psyche and myself to stay here amongst these people who treated me that badly. So I checked myself out, and on the way out, I found this little flyer for something called Vivitrol, and I looked at it, and it said it was a shot for people to reduce or stop drinking. And by the time I got home, I called the detox place again, and I said, so, how do I get this Vivitrol shot that's $1,000 a month, which was ridiculous, and I couldn't afford it, but I thought, hell, I'll do anything. And they didn't answer the phone. And they continued to not return my calls. So now 2, 3, 4 days go by, and I'm doing all this research online. I'm just saying, well, this is ridiculous. They're not calling me back. So yeah. I found out that the main ingredient is naltrexone in Vivitrol, and that shot would stay in your system for forever, but it would go in different increments and be released under time release. And then I went to Google naltrexone and realized that has a half-life of 10 to 12 hours. Coming from a family of doctors, I thought, well, that would be nice to be able to flush it out of your system and not have it in your system 24 hours a day, because who wants to drink 24 hours? Most of the time, the cravings kick, once the honeymoon period of sobriety wears off, or maybe the craving kicks in its why would I want to block working out or making love or all the things that I enjoy? So anyway, once I Googled that, Dr. Roy Escapa's book came up, The Cure for Alcoholism. Mm. And that came up, and I quickly ordered a copy online and got the book and just read it, and it made sense. It just really made sense to me. And I, back then, unbeknownst to me, there were pretty much no doctors in the US that would prescribe naltrexone in this manner, much less prescribe naltrexone at all. I now come to find out that there was one doctor, Dr. Stephen Cox, who has just he's become a wonderful friend, and he's the president of the National Anxiety Foundation. He was a huge proponent of it because he was friends with Sinclair and Escapa, and he saw it in his own patients. He utilized it in his own patients, and he saw the success rates. So, but he was in Lexington. How would I know? So at that point, since I called my GP and I said, hey, I want to come in and talk to you about starting a new medication. And I went in and I told him that I think that I drink too much. And he said, well, what do you mean by too much? And I said, well, I've become a binge drinker, and that's not good. I'll drink till I get sick. And he said, well, just stop drinking.
Oh, thanks.
I know.
Really helpful.
Wow, that's $160 visit. Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. Wow. What a bold concept.
Yeah.
No, so I, so I said to him, I said, well, I've tried that a lot. And I've read this book and it talks about the deprivation effect. And it really explains why I keep relapsing, because my brain is not fixed. And he just said, look, I'm not going to give you some hocus pocus medication. And I said, will you at least look it up? And he said, no, I'm not interested. So I finally found a friend who had a more open-minded doctor, young guy, lives near me. And I went to him after, now at this point, I had to order the medication from India, of course, because I wanted to start it. And then I finally went to this guy to get a prescription. And he would, even after I'd already been on it for 3 to 4 months, he said, well, I don't want to give you a prescription for more than 15 tablets, which was completely counterintuitive. It's like, wait a minute, it's working for me.
Yeah.
Why won't you give me the full on prescription? But I think it was some sort of thing in his mind legally that he had to figure it out. But since then, he treats dozens of people with TSM because he's seen the results himself. And he's a big champion of TSM, and he's on our website. If you live in Sherman Oaks, that's who to go to. But yeah, that was my sort of long-winded journey through the sort of hallways of addiction treatment and self-research. This is another thing that really kind of scares me, because there's so much information on the internet now. And because when I started, there was very little. There weren't any podcasts. There weren't the Facebook pages like Your Choice, Your Recovery, TSM Warriors. There wasn't our forum. There was no real information out there. Now that I've made the film One Little Pill, written my book Babylon Confidential, and now my nonprofit is 5 years old, there is solid information out there. But what bothers me is that people have a tendency to start comparing stories too often, and then they get either disappointed or they start to get in some sort of like competition mode where, oh, you reached extinction in 3 months. Oh, I'm in month 8. That means I'm going to die. You know, people get very dramatic about their results, and people have to realize, and anybody listening to this has to realize that you, for instance, you had a beautiful, clean TSM experience, and it's amazing. In 6 months, before 6 months, you reached extinction. You rarely drink, you just drink socially, and you're completely safe. Amazing. But there are some people whose addiction is more ingrained or maybe different. Their neural pathways are wired a little bit differently, and it takes longer. I would say after the studies we did last year through C3 Foundation, we found that the majority of people take 9 to 12 months for full extinction. And that sounds daunting to anybody, but look at the alternative.
Yeah, I can wait 10 months, versus 10 years of not.
Well, I'm either going to be dead or I'm going to be really, really happy and alive and healthy. And all I'm going to have to do is pop a pill before I drink and keep a drink log and maybe be active in the community and live my life. I'm not asking you to go away and quit your job because you have to go to some $80,000 treatment center. That's the beauty of TSM. But human nature dictates that people still get impatient and they still want immediate results. And it's unbelievable to me. It's like, look, the pill is generic. Even if you don't have insurance, it's a few dollars a pill. I mean, the worst I think I've ever seen, it was $8 a pill. How much do you pay for a pint of beer?
Yeah, or a coaching session, or with $500 an hour.
Tony Robbins, you went to him. Geez, that must have cost the size of a Subaru,
So, just for the listeners who have never heard of the Sinclair Method, just how does it work? Like, you take the pill 1 hour before you drink every time?
You take now people and doctors, so that your body can get used to the medication. Let me preface that by saying some people have absolutely no side effects. Some people feel a little nauseous. So we always tell people, eat something and start with half a tablet for the first 4 drinking sessions. At the 5th drinking session, you'll move up to the full pill. So you take the tablet, you wait 1 hour at least, And then you drink mindfully. And what does that mean? That means you take a drink and you say, well, am I drinking to get a buzz? Am I drinking because my husband's ticking me off? Am I drinking because whatever? Drink mindfully, and then you have to write it down, say how much you drank. And every subsequent drink, you should ask yourself, do I really want the next drink? Or am I just doing it because, you know, Bob's buying the next round, or because I'm out socializing? Maybe I should switch to soda water for one, just as a test. But these are all early on. The bottom line is, the most important thing is, and I know it sounds so easy, this is why people don't get how well it works, because they don't believe it. Because you've got this cheap pill, all you do, take it, wait an hour, have a drink.
Yeah.
And eventually, you lose interest.
Yeah. And just to throw out some very rough numbers, but from what I've seen, it's like AA is like 10% effective, and this is like 80 to 90% effective.
There aren't hard statistics, because of course it's anonymous, but Gabrielle Glazer did an amazing in-depth interview research paper on AA, and I believe she came up with a pretty hard 5 to 8%. Now, what's very interesting about that is that apparently about 8% of the world can quit anything on their own. So
was it even
there's your success rate? We all know the person who, you know, one day went, cigarettes are too expensive, threw down the pack and went, I'm done.
Yeah,
you know, and I've known people to quit heroin and coke. I mean, I know myself, when I was, you know, I did some blow in the 80s, and one day I just went, this doesn't feel right. It's just not fun. This is lousy. And I just never touched it again. Whereas alcohol stayed with me, caffeine, you know, a little bit, you know, but I quit caffeine for 6 months easily. Just as a test, I went on some little, you know, fad diet, and then no sugar, no caffeine, whatever. Not a problem, no headaches, no irritation, totally normal. So everybody is wired differently. But normally we find that so if somebody takes the pill for, let's say, in the usually the first 3 months, you have a lot of classic, I don't want to say everybody's the same. Obviously, I've said that they are not. You have some people who are immediate responders, that they start doing it, and let's say they're drinking 90 units a week, they suddenly drop to 40. And that's like within 4 weeks, 5 weeks. So their drinking is more than halved within a month. We have other people who take the pill a few times and are sort of these miraculous responders who kind of go, I don't want to drink anymore. You know, there are people online that you can listen to. Gary Bell is a perfect example. I mean, he drank for a little bit on naltrexone, and are faster than the rest. And then but most people, you know, I would say, see a massive difference between month 3 and 4, because that's when your brain really starts to change, and you start noticing things like, oh my gosh, I left a half a beer and I paid for that beer.
Yeah.
Like, I have, you know, I have people emailing me saying, I poured a drink down the drain. That doesn't happen in my house. You know, and then I'll get another email from someone saying, okay, I just made, you know, Christmas is over and tons of people brought booze. It's all still here. Champagne, there isn't, you know, quarter bottle of champagne. Who would keep undrunk champagne? It's going to go, you know, flat, you know. And they're just overwhelmed at the disinterest in alcohol. And that's the beauty of it, is it's not something that's forcing you to do something that's not natural. It's not asking you to engage in an activity on a daily basis that doesn't feel natural to you. All it's asking you to do is take this medication an hour before you drink.
Right.
That's it. Just take it, and take this medication an hour before you drink. I look at it like a prophylactic, like a condom, because especially if you're young and you haven't really developed an AUD yet, but you've gone out and you've been in risky situations, maybe young girls who've been sexually assaulted when they've been really drunk, or young men that put themselves in a position of maybe having attempted rape because they've been so under the influence, or driving under the influence, all of these things. So I look at it for younger people like, why don't you just take this pill before you go out if you're going to be in a risky environment, Jello shots, this kind of thing. Take it, prepare yourself for the environment that you're going to be in. If you're going to be around somebody who triggers you to drink, then why not take the medication?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So, and just structurally for the listeners who haven't yet watched One Little Pill, which I highly recommend, amazing documentary. Thank you so much for sharing that with the world, Claudia. But the way it works, I think, is that it's an opioid antagonist, which sort of blocks the endorphins, dopamine. So your brain isn't being rewarded for taking action. And then you do it less and less because you're like, the brain's like, what's the point? I'm not getting that rush, those endorphins anymore.
Yes. And some people will experience drinking pretty much the same on naltrexone as they normally did. Other people will miss that specific rush. Those are people that might take a little bit longer towards extinction or not. Who knows? I would still say to somebody that's fearful, well, why am I going to take something that's not going to make me want to drink more? You're still going to love the taste of the alcohol. You're still going to enjoy that relaxation effect. You might get a buzz. You can get drunk on naltrexone. The point is, hopefully, it's not going to make you want to get drunk. You're going to have just enough to be social and to not feel like you're the odd man out, and maybe to be able to enjoy a nice glass of wine. But then your brain's not going to be able to keep going, where's the rest of the bottle? Where is that? I hope so-and-so goes to bed so I can sneak down and get more. The compulsion is gone. So that's why I don't really like what a lot of media outlets have described TSM as a pleasure killer. That's not true at all. First of all, it's the reward center of the brain, and that's often named the pleasure center. But if you look at it this way, if you're drinking just an amount to have a beautiful dinner, or to go out with your buddies and have a cold beer or something like that, and you stop, then that's pleasurable drinking. What's not pleasurable drinking is throwing up, passing out, making bad choices, drinking again in the morning. That's not pleasurable drinking. So I think that the media, when they came out, and there was one smart post that it's the anti-binge drinking pill. That's what they came out when nalmefene was supported by the NHS in the UK. And I agreed with that. It's the anti-binge drinking pill. But it's more than that. It really returns you back to the person you were before the addiction crept in.
Yes.
And I think you can testify to that, right?
100,000,000%. And I just want to ask you a couple little structural questions about using it, because I really leaned on your documentary heavily because I found some forums, like Reddit has a forum where I was able to connect with some people there. But you say, because what I think this pill does is it sort of blocks and prevents the reward center. So you say, or people say, take it and then wait an hour. What I was doing, and I still do, is I set my phone timer, and then the minute it hits 1 hour, then I'm like, okay, I can drink. But is it okay to wait longer? Number one, and then number two, but what if there's something really healthy that I want to do in 2 hours, like weightlifting, but I want to feel those endorphins? Am I supposed to wait 5 hours? Or am I overthinking the whole thing?
Look, yeah, you're overthinking the whole thing. It's like people say to me, well, if I take it, am I going to enjoy sex? And I'm like, okay, if you're taking it before a date and you go out and you have a couple of drinks, you tell me if the sex was good. I mean, that's really kind of not that. That's kind of apples and pears. I mean, it really doesn't depend on this. This isn't going to deaden that. And also people panic about the workout things. Like, well, if I drank until 10 p.m. and then I get up and I want to do my morning workout, is it going to be ruined? Hell no. In fact, I used to take naltrexone and then go on a walk for an hour.
Okay.
To kill the time. when I started, I'd go work out. Now, mind you, Dr. Escapa will say, well, that's not really what you want to have a dual aspect of this. The dual aspect therapy of TSM is that on your alcohol-free days, your drink-free days, you want to engage in the best endorphin-producing activity you can.
Right.
However, people get really anal about that when they read the book, and they think that suddenly they can't eat spicy food, make love, or work out on days that they're drinking or taking naltrexone. And that's just not true.
Okay.
This is anecdotal experience and evidence that we've collected over the past near decade. And all that I can tell you is just, you can live your life. And then when you get to the point when you have alcohol-free, naltrexone-free days, like a particular day, and it may fall on a day that you have some time, absolutely do something like a hike or something stimulating.
Yep.
And it should feel amazing. That runner's high, that kind of thing should be really, really wonderful. As far as, oh my gosh, I popped a naltrexone and I had anticipated drinking in an hour, but my buddy wants to lift weights right now. Okay, if that's ever going to happen. So what? You're going to get a workout in.
Yeah.
It's not like you're suddenly going to die or something. You're going to get a workout. You're still going to have some sort of wonderful flush from working out, but I think people really start to overthink this. And as far as setting your timer, it's because in the beginning you're so concerned with control, and that's a good thing to be. You want to be as fastidious as possible insofar as compliance, and just you setting that notification is great because it also gives us control. It makes us accountable in our recovery. So if I know that I'm going to be in a situation where there's going to be alcohol, I'm going to take at 6 o'clock, let's say, I'm going to take the pill at 4:30, and maybe even before I leave the house, have a tiny bit of alcohol, just in case, let's say they don't serve alcohol till 8 or whatever. That's what I used to do back in the old days. It was this massive protection plan, constantly going, okay, it's Sunday and I don't know if they'll be. So I would always protect myself because then I knew that I was okay for the duration of it. But the most important thing is to wait at least an hour because it needs to get into the brain and into the bloodstream. So what you don't want to do is go, oh yeah, I'd love to have a drink, pop pill with the drink. Or say, well, it's been 32 minutes. That's cool. No, it has to be in your system. Before you drink. And people get really kind of annoyed about this rule. But when you think about it, it's one rule. And if you had a life-saving medication that you had to take every morning, and if you didn't take it, you would die. Would you mess around with that? Would you
follow the rule?
Would you go, well, it's 8 o'clock and I kind of don't feel like popping? Have to make naltrexone your life-saving medication. That's why we do the keychain program, where you always have it on your key. A lot of people who barely even drink anymore still have that naltrexone on them. Some people wear it on a chain. Some people have it on a keychain, piece of jewelry, as a reminder that you're always in remission. You are always in remission, and you can't drink without it, period.
That's so great. And kind of just as we wrap up here, I just want to also say that when I saw the doctor about it, she clearly did not know really anything about naltrexone. She prescribed it to me, but she said she wants me taking it all the time, like at least once a day, even if I'm not drinking. And I was just like, and I knew I had to say okay for her to give me the medication, but like the fact that I knew more about this than the doctor, I was like,
but you have to understand, first of all, doctors aren't given a lot of addiction education during the time that they go to school. Second of all, when the FDA approved naltrexone, it was with abstinence, simply because that's the way they felt comfortable prescribing it.
Right.
So that's why there's been that's why it's been so difficult. It's not only the monetary aspect of it. Nobody can really make a lot of money off naltrexone. I mean, look at what we do at C3. I provide you a free movie. Go to Amazon or Tubi and watch my film. and then, ask your doctor for a prescription, and here, we've given you a forum, online resources, whatever you want. You can recover for the price of the medication. You can recover right now for the price of the medication, which for some people with insurance, it's $10 a month. Yeah. And they don't drink every day, so they've got surplus pills. But as far as your doctor goes, that's simply a lack of education. And that's what our mission is now, is to educate as many doctors as possible so that they're not prescribing it incorrectly, which is usually in the morning, and abstinent. Because frankly, most people, by the time they start craving, it's late afternoon, early evening, and now the medication is wearing off. So it's really kind of it's not a great way to prescribe it, and you're going to block a lot of endorphins that occur naturally during the day.
Exactly.
So I would say that your doctor, bravo that she gave it to you, but I hope that you send her a link to one little pill and maybe a PDF of the book. Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you should.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to do with this episode, and just carry forward this mission to share it with more people. And one thing we were talking about offline before we started was potential applications. I'm curious, have you ever seen this be successful with other compulsive behaviors?
Yes.
And if so, what do people need to be careful about, for example, if they're doing it for like opioid?
Well, as far as dual diagnoses, I've seen a lot of success with online addiction and gambling and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
But if one is an opiate addict, you have to be completely clean before you start naltrexone therapy for opiate addiction. Because think about it, it's an opiate antagonist. So if you take it, you're going to go into withdrawal. It's going to eliminate the opiates in your system. Mm-hmm. So that means you're going to go into, that could be very dangerous. So, but once you get clean off opiates, if you take it, that's why they offer, I think, the long-term Vivitrol shot, so somebody doesn't have to physically take the pill. That's why antabuse didn't work, because you had to take the pill so that you wouldn't drink. But most people that were alcohol dependent were like, well, I just won't take the pill because it's going to make me sick. See, it wasn't fixing your brain. It was simply a very expensive medication that was making you ill. But if you have the opiate blocker implant, like the naltrexone implant or the Vivitrol shot in your system, and you're an opiate addict, then if you do happen to be in a situation where there's opiates and you do take an opiate, you won't get re-addicted because it won't have any effect on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. So any final words you want to leave with listeners today, just how they could either start or carry forward their journey of recovery or implementing these amazing tools we now have?
Well, certainly I would recommend, if you have a loved one or a friend, first of all, please try not to be judgmental. Understand that this is a disorder of the brain, and that the person is not choosing the bottle over you. This is a brain disorder, and it's a disease. So maybe look into my website, c3foundation.org. And maybe if you're a family member and you have somebody who's suffering, sit down with them. My documentary is under an hour long. It's really succinct and shows you real people on it and the science behind TSM. And you can watch it on Amazon for free. You can, like I said, Tubi. It's just a really great tool to sit down with them and say, look, you don't even have to give up drinking. You just have to take this medication. This is amazing. Yeah. And as far as we know, obviously opiate addiction and pregnancy are the only contraindications. So most people need to talk to a doctor. Let me preface that, and see if their liver is all, checked out and everything, and that they can take any opiate antagonist. But it is FDA approved. It is, it's safe. It's non-addictive. And just for others out there, if you need resources, all of this social media has helped so much. Like I mentioned before, Sinclair Warriors, Your Choice, Your Recovery, of course, Options Save Lives, which is our forum. And if you go to my website, you will find a plethora of information, including the scientific research papers and podcasts and radio shows like this. So you can listen and learn and spread the word yourself. And if you're in need, send an email through the website and it will reach me directly. And I'm happy to help.
That's amazing. Well, it scares me to think, what if I didn't see your documentary? you know, and it makes me so grateful at the same time and happy. And I'm so glad to be able to share this with the audience. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Well, thank you. And it's people like you who do the work that I can't do at that. You know what I mean? You're paying it forward. So I'm much appreciative of your efforts as well. So
yeah, well, my
have
pleasure.
a wonderful new year. I'm so happy for you.